On today's Locked On Texan podcast, more takeaways and team notes for the Houston Texans, revisiting the TQ getting more snaps after Brevin Jordan's healthy scratch and whether or not the Houston Texans need some spring cleaning in the fall.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. I'm John Hickman, of course, joined by Cody Davis, here to discuss the Houston Texans. Before we dive into our first topic, do want to let you guys know a couple of things. First, the Houston Texans and Justin Britt agreed to a reduced base salary rate while he is on the NFI, generating nearly $1 million in cap savings for the 2022 season. Quarterback Davis Mills in the fourth quarter has thrown 5 interceptions, tied for most in the NFL with Steelers rookie quarterback Kenny Pickett. Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil only allowed a combined 1 pressure against the New York Giants. I know Davis Mills had a rough day, right? And that's because a total of 12 pressures was allowed by Scott Quisenberry, the center, Kenyon Green, the rookie left guard, A.J. Cann, the veteran right guard. Dexter Lawrence, who, he was a game record for the New York Giants, he registered 1 sack and 5 QB hits on Sunday. The Texans' offense in the fourth quarter, well, they have led or had a tied game going into the fourth quarter 4 times, averages 3.3 points per fourth quarter so far. That is a huge issue. Notable snap count numbers: Nico Collins in his return played in 78% of the offensive plays. Brandon Cooks in his return played in 64%. Chris Moore, 53%. Dorsett, 42%. O.J. Howard and Jordan Akins both featured in 52% of the offensive drives. Rookie tight end Tegan Quintoriano, TQ, featured in 42% of the offensive plays, which is an increase from 30 a week ago versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Brevin Jordan was a healthy scratch versus the New York Giants. We talked about the young man and TQ getting more opportunities, and the coaching staff did just that. This young man helps tremendously as a run blocker, and I think we'll continue to see him earn reps.
And there you go, and this goes back to something that you and I talked about on last week's show after TQ made his NFL debut against the Eagles. And you saw, as we mentioned, majority of his snaps came during the first half. And what did we all talk about? How good the Houston Texans offense looked in that first half. And when I got news that Brevin Jordan was a healthy scratch, it just showcased once again the struggles that Brevin Jordan is going through. And look, I understand it. It's still early in this young man's career, but when Brevin Jordan first got here with the Texans, we all thought for sure that he would at least help the Houston Texans in the passing game. We all knew that he struggled with his run blocking and his pass protection, and that is something that he still needs to improve on. However, when you go back and you take a look at Brevin Jordan, and John, I want to give credit to you because you sort of brought this to my attention during the preseason. He wasn't as productive in the passing game like he was during the second half of his rookie campaign. I mean, this is a guy in Brevin Jordan, the first half of the season, he has only caught 7 balls for 18 yards. That is terrible, especially when your best attribute is a pass catcher. And look, I must say, I was wrong because I was raving about Brevin Jordan in training camp, and he did look good. But at the same time, he is another second-year prospect that has taken a step back from the production that we saw last year. And then when you take a look at TQ, you look at a guy who can not only give you something in the passing game, but as you just mentioned, he helps in the run blocking. And what is something Lovie Smith has been harping on ever since the arrival of Dameon Pierce? He wants this team to be a running football, and he should be, because like I keep mentioning, Dameon Pierce should be MVP of this team. Because as you see, going back to the game against the Giants, when the Texans cannot establish the run, it's going to be 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. And as you saw, when the Texans finally had an opportunity to go out there and establish a run against the Giants, who was out there on the field? TQ. And it's unfortunate, and I'm not going to say that the Texans should give up on Brevin Jordan. I'm hoping that this is somebody that can, use the second half of the season to continue getting better, work on what he needs to work on, because I still feel he can be very valuable. Maybe we could see Brevin Jordan be what they're doing right now with OJ Howard and Jordan Akins. By the way, Jordan Akins, in 7 games that he has appeared in as of right now, 272 yards on 27 catches. And in the game against the Giants, this is a young man, 72 yards on 3 catches, which led the team in receptions against the New York Giants. But I say all that just to say that Brevin Jordan has now gotten lost in his position group. But John, this is another example of how TQ is going to overtake Brevin Jordan during the second half of the season, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and I want to kind of mini correct you. Akins led the team in receiving yards, not receptions. I think Nico Collins led the team in receptions.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Receiving yards with 72 yards on 3 catches.
Yeah, when we look at Brevin Jordan, I think we can wrap it up in 3 points. Mental mistakes, the lack of targets and passing opportunities, which was his strong suit. So you're not being able to do what you're good at, and he's not valuable in aiding this team in the identity, which is running the ball, right? Getting out there, getting nasty in the trenches, getting the hand on somebody. And those are some of the things that we've seen out of the rookie. And it's 2 featured in games, even dating back to some preseason action and in practice. He doesn't necessarily have those mental mistakes. He aids this team in their identity right now. That identity is Dameon Pierce getting the football, right? He's going to get his hand on somebody. He's going to, make it difficult for the defender to get to the running back or whoever they're trying to get to. And I don't think that he needs targets. That's not his strong suit. So those targets and passing opportunities will come, but that's at the bottom of his list of what he wants compared to Brevin Jordan. That should be at the top of his list, but it's not happening. And so, again, for Brevin Jordan, like you mentioned, Cody, you take the second half of the season, you work on things to get better, you work on things in practice, and hopefully that those opportunities come to you because you're still under contract at the very least until next year. Houston will need bodies, but with this upcoming draft coming up, the tight end position being something that you want to find a valuable tight end for the future, and who knows if Houston has that tight end on the roster, you really want to do whatever you can to separate yourself from the likes of OJ Howard, who's only signed on a 1-year deal, for the likes of Jordan Akins, who I believe the Houston Texans should want back, if not for anything, veteran presence for the following year, for the upcoming season. And so for Brevin, take it personal. That's it. Take it personal. I do want to give you guys some more snap count information. Former Illinois linebacker Jake Hansen played under Lovie Smith, received more playing time against the Giants than what he did against the Eagles with 17 snaps compared to 8. Garrett Wallow did not play any defensive snaps on Sunday. The holidays are here, ladies and gentlemen. Thanksgiving is around the corner, and prices for food and drinks and everything is through the roof. But if you know some sports, and if you're feeling a little lucky, go ahead and download the Prize Pick app. Super easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch, which includes the NFL, the NBA, NHL, PGA, college basketball, women's college soccer, whatever is out there. You can bet on it at prizepicks.com. Entries can be made in less than 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So please download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. And with the holidays around the corner, did you know that over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package thefts spiked nationally? That's why our friends at Simply Safe Home Security are offering a 50% off their award-winning system so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. Order your Simply Safe system for half off today and enjoy the advanced security and greater peace of mind this holiday season. Simply Safe named the best home security of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report a third year in a row. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify if the threat is real so you can get priority police response. Can't beat that, Cody. Listen, with a top-rated Simply Safe app, stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere, arm or disarm, unlock for guests, access your cameras, or adjust the system settings. Don't miss out on your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplysafe.com/locked on NFL. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen of the day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. I would like to take this time and opportunity to dedicate this show to my Uncle Flip, who just passed away. Love you, man. Until I see you again. So really quick, I do want to mention that the Houston Texans, they have an issue, Cody. And we talked about in our pregame discussion whether or not it's time to clean house, right? We look at what Lovie Smith has been able to do or what he has been unable to do. The offensive struggles with Pep Hamilton. And I do want to mention that if you go back and look at the Houston Texans on Sunday against the New York Giants, they had an issue on third down defensively. And on third downs, they were caught lacking 4 times on critical plays. In the third quarter, down 7-3 on 3rd and 9. Missed tackle on Jalen Petrie, touchdown. On the third quarter, down 14-10, 3rd and 7. Daniel Jones completes it right across the middle. They move the chains. On 3rd and 7, 14-10, third quarter, once again, Daniel Jones is able to find one of his men right in the middle between the safety and the linebacker. And in the fourth quarter, down 21-10, 3rd and 10, 7 minutes and 45 seconds left to go. They allowed a big play from Daniel Jones to be converted. He used his legs to pick that up. Cody, do I personally think that it's time to move on and clean house? Partially. But that decision also comes with moving on from your general manager. And I don't believe Nick Caserio is going to be moved on just yet. I'm more of a keep Pep and move on from Lovie Smith kind of guy. But I don't see Houston bringing in someone who will keep an OC from the previous head coach twice. Remember, Tim Kelly stayed when they brought in David Culley. I don't see another head coach allowing that process to happen. The Mills and Pep experiment has flashes that is as rare as a harvest moon. And I mentioned those fourth quarter issues. I mentioned the 3.3 points in the fourth quarter. I believe they have trust issues in play calling and executing when they have the lead, which is partially why we've seen Davis Mills and his numbers spike when the Houston Texans are down, dating back to last season whenever we've seen some of his big games. Well, a lot of those times he's either playing from behind or playing against backup players. 1 touchdown and 13 first downs when playing with the lead so far this year. That's inexcusable. And again, I believe this is due to the trust between Pep and Davis Mills. So I'm comfortable with moving on. So am I comfortable for moving on from a handcuffed offensive coordinator? I'm not 100% comfortable with that. And I'll tell you why. The pass to Chris Moore on the out route, where he was stopped. I think the ball wasn't even completed. You had Brandon Cooks wide open. The screenplay to once again, I believe it was Chris Moore that was on 3rd and 8, 39 on Sunday. Well, you had Nico Collins in the seam. How can you blame an offensive coordinator when your quarterback isn't giving your guys the opportunities to make plays? But this isn't just pinpointed to the New York Giants game. No, this is happening throughout the entire season where throws are being predetermined by Davis Mills, where reads are not being made by Davis Mills. And then in the end, it's the offense that's struggling because he is not hitting open guys. And defensively, third downs has hurt Houston and cost them in moments where you want your team off the field. Missed tackles. Opponents are nearly averaging 9 passing yards on third downs, 6.1 rushing yards on third downs. Both the worst for Houston, and opposing quarterbacks are averaging a 102 passer rating on third downs. On third down, between 7 and 9 yards, 82 completion percentage, 11.4 yards passing allowed. 17 out of 17 attempts, 9 completions for third downs was converted to first downs. How can we do that? How can we keep Lovie Smith when he had an issue last year and he's having an issue this year? So I'm okay with moving on from Lovie Smith this season. I really am. I think that if you want to do right by Lovie Smith, you bring him into some executive role, similar to what you did with Romeo Crennel. But those numbers show that neither side of the ball has been able to make plays when it matters the most routinely. But it's hard to believe Nick Caserio will move on from Lovie Smith and Pep Hamilton, seeing as those were his decisions. And I've been told several times that what made it difficult for Houston to hire a Jonathan Gannon or Kevin O'Connell was the relationship with previous team members and player relationships around the league. I don't think many guys wants to touch this team, which brings me to my last point. I'm not 100% sure that we'll move on from Lovie Smith and Pep Hamilton after this season. I do believe that Houston will invest into a defensive coordinator moving forward.
John, this brings me to a conversation that I had a lot this time last year. And it goes back to David Culley. And I'm not about to sit here and take up for Culley in no way, shape, or form. We all know what type of head coach Culley was. But, John, remember my theory that I said if the Texans are not moving forward in their rebuild, you keep David Culley for another season. And here we are, November 5th, entering week 11 of the regular season with Lovie Smith as the head coach. John, I want you to answer this question truthfully. Listeners, viewers, I want you guys to tweet us, comment in YouTube, and I want you to honestly ask yourself and tell me, have the Houston Texans taken any step forward with Lovie Smith as head coach?
I don't believe so. I think that Lovie Smith has received more talent, but has done less with that. And I think that's fair.
My point exactly. And it really didn't dawn on me, John. And the reason why I brought up David Culley is because so many people are talking about, whether or not they should move on from Lovie Smith and Pep Hamilton or just clean house all across the board. And everybody's conflicted because when you take a look at the general manager, Nick Caserio, who once again, I give him credit for the talent he has been able to bring in through the draft. Free agency. I think this year it was better when you take a look at the addition of Steven Nelson, addition of Jerry Hughes. Some of the trades, still hasn't really been a hit to say the least. But I think Nick Caserio has done a decent job given the hand that he has dealt since he has been the general manager of this team. But so many people are conflicted on whether or not the Texans should clean house with their coaching staff, because this will put, as you know, Nick Caserio in a position to where he would be hiring a new head coach for the third consecutive year. And this is why I kept saying, if you did not feel that the Texans were going to take a step forward in your rebuilding process. This is why you should have kept David Culley, give him another year, which, by the way, this time last year, the Houston Texans already had 2 wins under their belt with David Culley as your head coach. But you would have had an opportunity to go out there and get the head coach that you wanted. Now, you wanted Jonathan Gannon. A source told me that Jack Easterby wanted Josh McCown. All of a sudden, there's a lawsuit by Brian Flores, and now you got Lovie
Don't forget
Smith.
Kevin McConnell, who was doing an amazing job with the Minnesota Vikings, was also in the mix as well. And I think Leslie Frazier.
My point exactly. So I just brought that into the equation because I really do think that Nick Caserio and the Houston Texans would have been in a better position had they kept David Culley for an additional year, just based off the fact that this team has not moved forward with their rebuild. And this would have given you a off season to get a better coach, because Nick Caserio, once again, has done a damn good job in the draft, done a solid job in free agency, given the hand that he's dealt. And John, I do agree with you. This team is more talented to where they were last year, which means this would have been a more pleasing job to head coaches around the league. Say, you know what? I finally want to give the Houston Texans a chance. But I go back to something that John Morera said during Brian's Daboll introductory press conference, and everybody was asking him, are you guys going to move on from Daniel Jones? And I remember he said something. He said, we as an organization have failed Daniel Jones since he got here in 2019. And everybody in New York, from the fans to the media personalities, everybody was ready for them to move on from Jones. And here we are entering week 11 of the regular season. And I'm not about to sit here and say that Daniel Jones is a top 10, top 15 quarterback. But the fact that you finally got the right head call and a head coach who knew how to build a system around his quarterback and make him look like a decent quarterback, to say the least. And not only that, you brought in other coordinators that actually has made improvements on both sides of the ball. And that's part of the reason why they are sitting here at 7-2. And like I mentioned on yesterday, John, and I'm going to repeat it again. When you take a look at the New York Giants, it's almost the same damn team. You have a quarterback who is still trying to find his way. You have a damn good run game. Your offensive line is decent. Your defense could be, better, but because you have a defensive coordinator who is utilizing and playing to the strengths of his players and not being stuck on something that made you one of the best defensive-minded coaches from 20 years ago, the New York Giants are having a good season. Unlike the Texans, who basically have the same amount of talent, they are sitting here at 1-6-1 now.
1-7-1.
1-7-1. And I feel like when you take a look at the young talents, especially something that you and I talked about a lot here on this show, even the guests that we have, when you take a look at the production of Derek Stingley, like the Houston Texans could be getting so much more out of their players if they had better coaching on the sideline. And once again, look, I'm not one to call for people's job, but I feel like Nick Caserio and the Texans have handcuffed themselves by the decision they made last year to move on from David Culley. Once again, I'm not taking up for David Culley. We all know what type of coach he was. But at the same time, I think that is going to hinder this Texan rebuild even longer.
It goes back to the opticals of optics, right? I mean, it doesn't look good that in 3 years you have 3 head coaches and 3 offensive coordinators, because no new head coach on the regular basis. Like, I don't think they can afford for it to happen again for you to say this is who your OC is going to be. And that's a problem. And listen, I'm going to stand firm on, if there is a new head coach, there needs to be a new general manager. I'm sorry. Nobody gets that type of nobody gets that type of leeway and pass in the NFL. 3 consecutive years, 3 consecutive new head coaches. That's my way of thinking.
A lot of people have been given McNair a lot of credit about the decision he has made over the last 6 to 8 months or whatever.
Yeah, he's been making hard decisions,
and he's been doing pretty good. But if it gets to the point where he's allowing this franchise to move on from Lovie Smith, in order for us to truly understand and know, you know what, this man is finally serious about running a real franchise, if he's moving on from Lovie Smith, I hate to say it, Nick Casario has to be with you. Because as you mentioned, John, I don't see any situation where a general manager has an opportunity to hire not one, not two, but 3 head coaches in 3 damn years. I understand this hasn't been the best situation, but you got to at least find some consistency with your players, especially these young players, because if you keep cycling through coaches, eventually that's going to hinder their development. And then you're going to be in a situation where we're sitting here talking about this person didn't live up to their promise and that person didn't live up to their promise.
And I will also say your next head coach or your defensive, whoever comes in next, needs to have their own identity, not from nowhere else. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers out there. Please get mad at us for our takes in that last segment. Please comment, and you guys are crazy. Listen, just last week we told y'all, you know what, maybe TQ is going to get some more playing time and snaps, and that's exactly what happened. I was thinking that it would be over, OJ Howard. Cody said Brevin Jordan. Both of those made sense. Healthy scratch for Brevin Jordan simply because he doesn't add to what the Houston Texans do good. And TQ increased in playing snaps with the likes of Jordan Akins and OJ Howard out on the field. But I do want to mention the playing snaps once again, Cody. As I mentioned early in the show, Gary Wallow did not see any defensive snaps. Jake Hansen received an increase in playing snaps. Blake Cashman received a decrease in playing snaps. However, whenever he did play, he made a count, had a sack on Sunday. He's a player that I think Houston really needs to showcase as well moving forward. But this season, it is what it is. This season is a Friday on trash day. It's just garbage. It's just garbage. If you live in good neighborhoods, those good suburbs, they come twice, like Monday and Thursday. It's garbage. It's over with. It's hot garbage. And I think that it's time to look towards the future. Got a lot of guys out there in the social media world, Texan world, whether it's some media members or people who just love this team doing mock drafts already, and we're in November, right? A lot of teams are gearing up for the playoffs or trying to make a race. Mock draft city is in Houston, not Clutch City.
Which, by the way, some of these mock drafts that I'm seeing online from the fans, it looks terrible. I think they've been looking pretty decent.
Some look good. I've seen some. What the hell are you doing? I was talking to my boy, Baby Blue Drew, yesterday, and he believes that depending on what the Houston Texans get back, they should consider trading one of those first-round picks, trading back from it and receiving more assets moving forward. Whatever you do, do not trade your number one pick.
Oh, you definitely know Nick is going to trade the Browns pick and, get more access.
I don't think they should do that either, unless you feel confident there's a player, which whatever team you're going to swap with, there's a player that's going to be available that you really like at that pick. But for Houston, Cody, I'll put this out there, and listeners and viewers, you please comment as well. Is it time to start prioritizing playing time for other players over some of the players we've seen out there routinely? For instance, Christian Kirksey played in majority of the defensive snaps on Sunday, but is it time to see more of Jake Hansen? Is it time to see more of Blake Cashman, who, again, he's a free agent acquisition during this offseason? I think Houston needs to see more of him because he could leave this – is he through? But either way, for the future, is it time to see what you already have on this roster in order to see who it's time to move on from?
Well, of course, because at this point in the second half of the season, and I know a lot of people looking towards the future into, the draft and trades and free agency and all this other good stuff about helping your team. But at the same time, we have to keep in mind that this is still a team that is still in the early stages of the rebuild, and you have to go out there and allow some of these young players to go out there on the field, showcase what they can do, because even if they're not in your long-term plans, that could still be a player that you could use in the short term to improve this roster moving forward. Because, in 2023, this is a franchise that has to take a step forward in their rebuild. They cannot continue to still be this same team for the third consecutive year. So I would say, without a doubt, you go out there and allow these young guys to go out there and play, help with their development, and hopefully that can help you be better next season.
Thank you guys for checking out today's Go to the Locked On Texan podcast and follow me on Twitter at John4Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.